I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. First up is consideration of our agenda. I know there is one thing that I would like to add to the agenda. Under presentations, I'd like to add E, city manager updates.
Madam Pro Tem, I move that the City Council approve the agenda as presented with the necessary adjustments.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
I guess I'll also say aye since there's only 3 of us here right now. Okay, so next up is our consent agenda. We have a couple items on that. Is there anything that anybody would like to have moved off consent agenda onto our regular agenda? Or a motion to approve?
Madam Pro Tem, I move that the City Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Awesome, that is approved. Hey, we're making record time, you guys. Oh, okay, awesome. For all of those that are wondering why I'm leading the meeting, the mayor is online. She just can't lead the meeting because she is not in the room with us. All right, presentations. First up is Dogwood Grant Proposal.
Turn it over to Mr. Polly.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council and Mayor Volk online, good to see you tonight. This has been pushed from a couple meetings back, but this is just an update and seeking direction for our Dogwood Grant proposal of funds. We have some proposed revisions for how to use those funds. Maybe this will work, maybe it won't. Okay, Allison, could you advance for me? It might be plugged into the wrong computer or something. There it goes. Thanks. Yeah, so goals for tonight is just a quick overview of our approach to the unhoused population and how it relates to this grant proposal and the housing opportunities we're pursuing, and to introduce the updated proposal and seek council's direction on the funding that we will be asking Dogwood to have a revised grant proposal for. Next slide, please. Just a couple things. So our strategic plan is our guide of how we move forward, and there are a variety of strategic plan areas that impact this grant proposal, those in the public safety realm, the housing plan realm, and the growth and community character realm, from enhancing downtown safety, social worker co-responder models, crisis response, expanding code enforcement capacity, creating vacant property registries, completing the strategic housing plan, more affordable housing, more workforce housing, and starting a unified development ordinance. So that is kind of the overarching guide to how we developed this new proposal. Do you want me to try it again, Allison? It is working. All right. Thank you, IT. Our research, so we've been doing research over the years, but most recently we had our intern Keegan present at the August meeting talking about different approaches that we could take to affordable housing and homelessness. Implementing the Built for Zero model was one. I just wanted to remind council that these are the types of things that we're looking at when we're developing these proposals for grants. So our approach from a current funding standpoint. So we have current funding available to us now, and there'll be just obviously decision points in the future of what we do for future funding around this, area of focus for council. We're going to talk about the Dogwood housing, the $1.5 million, the largest chunk of funds there, but I just want to remind the folks in the room and council of kind of the approach we have right now with the funds available to us currently. We have a housing plan grant for $100,000 from Dogwood. We've spent money on the Shane Phillips research, the field trip research to Durham and Chapel Hill. We've done various marketing, and we're doing logistics with that money. We're also doing the DFI, the Development Finance Initiative from UNC Chapel Hill, for the housing inventory research and market study, and then also $25,000 for facilitation services are being used from that $100,000. We also have ARP funds. Yes, ma'am.
What does facilitation services mean?
That would be FountainWorks is facilitating a variety of neighborhood meetings, but then also facilitating survey development, gathering all the data for us, and then also producing a document for us on the end. Did I get everything on that? Cool. ARPA for public safety, we had $680,000 program for that. We approved the downtown police officer in this year's budget for 3 years, which is about $284,000. We've proposed a zoning officer for 3 years, that would be next year's budget, and then downtown safety infrastructure at $150,000. So we have those two pots of money that are currently going towards these initiatives, and the Dogwood grant for housing is what we applied for and got from Dogwood, but we do want to adjust kind of our application. And so our revised proposal would be $1 million for housing and land. So this would be predominantly infrastructure support. So we would be doing things like purchasing land in partnership with a HAC or a nonprofit like that. For a land trust, we would be putting money into either acquiring land or loaning money on land for developments from the DFI results. So we'd have $1 million to use in that sort of capacity. We've written the grant to be flexible, so once we see an opportunity, we have the agility to kind of move on it. The remaining $500,000 we split into two buckets. One, $300,000 for mental and substance abuse support programming. So this would be a competitive application-based process like we did for the ARPA funds. If you remember, with our nonprofit community, we would put something out there, tell them desired outcomes we're looking for, the measurables we're looking to accomplish, and have a competitive application process where then we would come back to council and distribute that money to different nonprofit providers to achieve those goals. And then lastly, $200,000 for crisis intervention and housing navigator services. This money would really go to continuing and expanding those kind of social service support programs that we're standing up in our police department currently. So that's how we would propose using that $200,000. Any questions on the current funding?
The $1 million is obviously not going to be spent soon. So where is that money held while it's not being spent? And are there limitations, since it is grant money, on where that money can be stored?
The city holds it in a special grant fund.
Uh-huh.
And you can see that in our audit every year.
And do we make money on special grant funds?
We do earn interest on all the money we have. However, some of it is restricted in how we can use it. I'd have to ask John Buchanan specifically about that grant, if there are strings like that attached to it. I don't think there are, though. Yeah.
So the answer to the question is maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be generating a little bit of income there.
Yeah.
That would go, my guess is if it is generating, it would go back into that grant fund as
Well, that's what I would
program revenue.
Yeah.
prefer, but I'm just saying, like, maybe we can find out if there are specifics on how it can be stored, because if it can be stored in a higher interest
So we
space.
don't have really options from a state law perspective. So state law is going to supplement everything else we can do with our investments. And it is very restrictive for how we're investing money as a North Carolina municipality.
But what if we're forming the housing trust and the housing trust is investing the money?
If we gave the money to the housing trust can invest the money however we agree to allow them to invest it.
Okay.
And obviously, whatever nonprofit laws apply. Any other questions? Okay. And then just lastly, our plan long-term, it really is a multifaceted approach, from housing services and programs to policies enforcement and funding sources. So this is kind of the supply stability and subsidy buckets, just worded differently. And I think one of the big things we're going to have to think about as the city of Hendersonville is what do we do with funding sources for the future, right? We have current funding models that are grants and things that are great to pursue supporting housing right now, but we're going to have to think critically in the upcoming budget and future budgets about how we continue to have funding sources to stand up that three-legged stool. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, up next.
Yes, there is.
Yes, sorry, there is a
There's
motion
a
on that.
motion.
My apologies.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move the City Council proceed with the development of a revised grant application based on the direction provided by City Council at tonight's meeting.
Okay, all those,
So just to clarify for the minutes, I think the direction that the council would be that you support our proposed plan.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that's for the clerks, that the plan is okay and that we can move forward with getting a revised application to Dogwood Health Trust for their board to consider and we hope approve.
Is now an appropriate time to add that if there is a way to transfer that $1 million into a housing land trust as soon as possible to optimize interest so that we can then reinvest it into the land trust?
So I think I would hold off just right now. Let's get the grant approved and then we can come back to council and council can give us specific direction on how you want to spend that money specifically once we're got approval from Dogwood Health that we can do it in that way.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is to approve proceeding with the revised grant application based on what we were just presented. All those in favor of approving that direction, say aye.
Aye.
There aren't any no's because we all said aye. So awesome, that is approved. Thank you for your work on that. All right, up next is proposed revisions to Parks Master Plan.
So, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, just wanted to give a quick update publicly that the Parks Master Plan has been out on there on our website and available for public comment for the public as well as the council. We will be submitting that back to our consultant to make the changes that will come back for approval at your October meeting. A couple of significant things related to the Parks and Master Plan I just want to touch on for the public is as we've talked to council about the plan, there is specific discussion in the plan related to green gentrification. Wanted to just clarify that absolutely the council is very, and the city is very much aware of the concerns related to green gentrification and just gentrification in general. And it's been the council's direction to move forward with programs such as our strategic housing program, and also to be mindful that improved parks is a positive thing for everybody. Good quality of life supports all citizens within our community, and that's what this plan is about, right? Is improving the quality of life for all our citizens. The council is giving staff the direction through this plan to continue to focus on good quality of life, good parks in all areas of our community, provide good access to green space and amenities, regardless of location and socioeconomic background. So that's really key. And a second component, you have to look at all the work that City Council has asked us to do, including the strategic housing plan, minimum housing code, and those kind of things to really focus on an overall healthy community. So we want to make sure that's clear. The one other comment that I would make about the parks plan is we want the plan to be something that the entire community can support. And the one significant change, just want to be transparent about this, is there's Chapter 5 is currently entitled Equity. We know some of our community members don't support the term equity. However, the purpose of that section is really to encourage just what I talked about, is providing good quality parks in all areas of the community. So we are going to retitle that particular section as inclusion or inclusiveness, because that's really what we're talking about, is including all our citizens in our park program and have parks that all citizens. So we didn't want, and just frankly in this day and age, didn't want one word to distract what the purpose of the Parks and Recreation Plan is and what it's about. And it's about quality of life, and it's about providing good parks, amenities for our citizens. So just wanted to be transparent about that. And so if people are reviewing the revised plan that will be on your agenda, those are really the only significant changes. So I'll look to Mark Steerwalt, and I think I've covered everything regarding that, and we're good. So just wanted to be clear. So thank you.
Thank you for that. We look forward to seeing the final one at the October meeting. Okay, up next, Oakdale Cemetery Columbarium
That's it.
presentation.
Good evening, council. Mark Stierwalt, Superintendent of Public Works. This is a presentation that we did back in the fall, and essentially what has happened is we're about full in Oakdale Cemetery, so we don't have a tremendous amount of grave space left. And so for Councilmember Lawrence, I'm going to include just a little bit. Oh, good, the mayor's here. I know.
We got the band back together.
So just to do some quick review, some annual costs for Oakdale. Lawn care, we mow it every week. We try to weed eat it every other week. That takes our full landscape crew, our grounds crew, an entire day. That's with every single person working. And then it takes another full day just to weed eat it. So that removes the crew from the entire rest of the city. Tree work averages, 2 to 10,000. We will probably be over 10,000 this year. And then just having someone to handle the transactions and laying out the graves. It takes about 2 hours of staff time. And then we do have some buildings to maintain. In the bigger picture, things that are coming up, we'll have major tree work over the years. The roads have some age on them, so we're replacing those about every 5 years. And there's quite a bit of road in the cemetery, so that's not a small chunk either. And then, eventually we'd like to get to maintaining some of the forgotten headstones and that are falling over and things like that. And of course, there's the mausoleum that's going to take some maintenance. Currently, we have plans to renovate the roundhouse. Eventually, we'll repave the roads, renovate the mausoleum. That's on the schedule for this year. And then eventually, we'd like some sort of educational kiosk, kind of going over the history and such of Oakdale. So essentially, we've run out of space, and we're looking for a way to fund Oakdale for as long as possible to offset the maintenance costs. A columbarium is simply it's kind of like a mausoleum, but it would be for ashes. So you can put, most ashes are about 11 inches tall, so usually you have it 12 by 12, 12 by 15. And usually they're granite and very fancy. But it's something that, we could fund the Oakdale for at least another 30, 40 years, just depending on how much we choose to invest into this. So how much space is left? We have approximately 300 spaces available in Section Q, and I'll share where that is in just a second. We have a few spaces left in the mausoleum. We have a few other graves that are kind of sprinkled throughout. Yes, so we do have a clause that if someone has an empty space that is documented for a certain amount of time, that it's more or less abandoned, forgotten about, lost, the city can reclaim those and use those. But there are not many of those. That would be the exception, but there are a few. So, and of course, those would be in the more historical, older sections as well.
Excuse me, could you back up?
Sure.
That north side, is that on the side that was predominantly for the African Americans?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And it has its own set of issues. And essentially on the north side, it's a lot less predictable. A lot of the graves weren't spaced evenly, and some of them are mislocated. So we have done some ground penetrating radar in there. But if we were to go through and map the entire thing to find out where the additional spaces are, there's still the issue a lot of those were sold as deeds in those plots. And even if the person that's supposed to be buried there is often in the wrong space, someone else could own that. So the north side, we really don't have much space left unless we're willing to do, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I would say we'd probably be looking at over $100,000 to do analysis of what's there with ground penetrating radar. But it's pretty labor intensive. It has to go through a computer, and then a lot of times you have to come back and scrape off the grass or like the top few inches of soil. So it's pretty disruptive.
Okay, Did you receive all the paperwork from Pilgrims Wilson as to where those plots were? Because I know at one time, the city was trying to get that information of where the lots were at. Did you receive all of it?
I have not received those personally. They may have come in. I've only been with the city for a couple of years, but I can check into that for sure.
And I'll check in it as well.
Okay. Okay, great. Any other questions so far? Okay. One thing about the niches is when you look at locally what they're charged, it's on par or just slightly under what people are charging for graves at this point. Forest lawn, for instance, if you average that out, you're over $2,000 per niche. And then a lot of times they'll charge an additional $1,000 to open it and to place the urn in there, things like that. But these are just some different prices, but it's showing you that, depending on, some of them are a little less expensive, but the ones that are less expensive tend to charge at least as much to open and close the niche when they place it. So it's not really less, it just kind of appears that way. But it looks like, $2,000 is a pretty good average. And yeah, so again, you can put much more quantity in a denser concentration and a much smaller footprint. And these are just some of the locals. So these are just proposed rates. You, of course, would be the ones that would decide, but kind of averaging things out, still being on the lower end. If we did 16 per lot for city residents or per niche, 2,000. These are just suggestions, but our goal is whatever our final cost is on the niche, we'd like to at least make 100%, because the goal is really to pay for maintenance as long as possible while still being reasonable. But that is definitely to be decided. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, how many people are cremated these days? It's a growing trend. It's been growing significantly every year for at least 15 years, 20 years now. And it's not just in the lead. It makes a lot more sense environmentally with land shortages, things like that. So it seems to be more than just a trend. And this statistic is basically that if you were to take 100% of people who are cremated, almost 32% of people would like to have a designated space. A lot of people just want to be, throw my ashes to the wind at my favorite spot, but a lot of people would like someplace for loved ones to come back and remember them. So, and this just goes to show the trend that the percentages of cremation is still going up, but it's not going up as fast as it was, because it's almost 2 to 1 at this point. So it is slowing down a little bit, but they do not expect that to start going down or having less people get cremated. So where would we put a mausoleum? Currently, we only have, a columbarium. If you look at section Q down in the lower right-hand corner there, that's essentially all the space we have left. And, on the westernmost quarter there to the left of the queue, we have quite a few graves through there. But what we will have to decide is, if we were to go do the columbarium, how big would it be? And then, at some point we will have to cross a threshold of, we're going to only, we're going to cut the graves off at this point and save this much room for a columbarium. And it's pretty subjective. I do think we should kind of have that metaphorical line in the sand, but we could also have a time quotient to that and say that we're only going to sell graves for a year or 2 years or whatever council decides. We did have Watermark and Hunter Marks come up with some different options that I believe most of you have seen. This seems to be the one that had the most traction. And if you look at this on the left side is kind of what a columbarium could look like. There are several that are a little bit nicer than this, which is what I would recommend, usually a little more granite, not quite so modern looking. However, this kind of shows you spatially, if we did the section on the right that's kind of a little bit lighter, those are 2 different sections of 16 units. And so in that space on the right, we could easily put in 1,600 niches in that space. There's also opportunity in some places to put more. And while that would fund the Oakdale for quite a while, we do have the potential actually to double that or more than double that, depending on how we lay it out. So if we choose to move forward with this, we would really be trying to designate how much land are we going to set aside, and then how long would that fund Oakdale in perpetuity or down the road. If you were to take section Q and break it into thirds, essentially this is kind of spatially how it would work out if we did just one section. If we chose to do two, again, we would more than double how long we would be able to pay for the maintenance. This is an example of something that's just a little bit nicer. There's lots of options here that we could go through, but see a little bit more granite, a little bit fancier. If you look at the units behind, you see two different sizes of niches, and the ones on the left, the tall section, would be for a family, to where you could have multiple urns in there, and then the other ones would usually hold two. And then you can see with these, they aren't engraved, but usually what would happen is you would have that piece of granite, you would send it off, they would put names and dates, things like that. We would put in a blank for a while it's gone, and then switch them out. So questions, right? The big question is, do we proceed with the design and to have this, come up with some engineered plans and kind of move ahead to the next phase? And then if we decide to do that, the next question is kind of how much land would we want to designate for that? So, other questions?
I'm curious, Mark, how much square footage have we allocated in the cemetery for those faiths that do not believe in embalming, such as the Jewish and the Muslim faith?
So the Jewish section is almost full. So it's not that we've designated, but they have their own section, and it's kind of gated off, and they actually do their own maintenance. We do the rest of the cemetery. And I don't, so we haven't designated any. They had their section, but I've never been contacted by them either. But I know that we are getting very full, so. All right.
So the good presentation. I think that obviously the larger conversation here is we are proposing to spread out the availability of graves at the cemetery, and feel like columbarium may be a good option. Otherwise, in the not too distant future, we would need to go acquire property for additional cemetery, which I think we would say, let's let the private sector manage that. Frankly, from just a cost standpoint, and once you're in the cemetery business, you're always in the cemetery business, and it's just a cost. So we thought the columbarium was a good option, and I think I would recommend to you that if council's willing to let us at least start down this road to maybe taking what we have here, the 32 units there, and at least getting started, find out what the cost of a columbarium would be, and any kind of, because there may be some land improvement that needs to be done, leveling, drainage work, those kind of things, and put in a proposal to get together. But Mark's right, at some point we'll have to draw kind of a line in the sand, no pun intended. But I think what we talked about in the field, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe we'd start the area closest to Valley Street, and leave, and then continue to sell graves closest to what is out there is the maintenance shed area, and kind of work toward the middle. But ultimately, we'd have to make a decision when we stop selling graves. I mean, it all depends on how popular columbariums are, right? But at some point, we'd have to make a decision about, okay, this is as far as we're going to go on the grave sale, so that we have additional land for additional columbariums. So,
How many graves do we sell now in a year?
30-ish a year. There's definitely variability there.
Okay.
So right now, if we were to extend it all the way out, approximately 10 years, maybe 7 to 10 years.
And how much are we charging now for graves?
1,000 and 2,000 for city and county, or city and out of the city.
So,
With the influx of residents that are moving here from other areas, like this not being their home, are you seeing, like, do they have burial plots in other states that they maintain, or do they, or do you think, like, most people would want to be buried here if this is where they ended?
That's such a family-specific matter, and a lot of times it has to do with a certain amount of affluency, you know, to be thinking ahead far enough to go ahead and purchase these type things. You know, someone has to be willing to invest thousands of dollars.
Right.
You know, and then also there's nowadays, there's also usually maintenance charges and monthly maintenance charges and things like that, so.
With the columbarium, I don't actually know how much they cost to build, but is it a situation where we would be able to actually afford to build them and then be able to afford to maintain, like, that money that we're gonna be using, is it gonna be able to actually be used for maintenance, or is it gonna be used essentially for the construction of the columbariums?
So that would be up to you,
Uh-huh.
council, and I'm sure Brian would be able to weigh in on that. But, you know, my thought is if you can get your cost to where you're increasing it 100%, eventually you would get to the tipping point. And the beauty of these is you don't have to buy all of these at once. You know, our thought would be, let's go ahead and get a formal design, let's get it graded. Let's start with maybe the first phase or two of the sidewalks and kind of concreted areas. But really, let's get the trees growing, you know, and then these are modular. So the nice thing is if you go with a reputable company, you buy 6 or 8 at a time, you get those laid out, and as those sell, you get close, you go ahead and place an order for another 6 or 8. They come in on a truck, they literally take a crane and set them in place and drive away. So with it being modular, it allows you to invest over time. So it's not like you're having to pay for 100% of this up front. In the beginning, though, you would have to pay for grading, and it's kind of sloped, there's some drainage issues, but it's not overly complicated grading.
Well, I definitely support moving forward with it, if that's an answer that you need from me tonight, but,
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I support it, and this will allow you the opportunity to make your sales pitch to the local funeral homes as well, so that they can include it in their package.
Sure. And most of the funeral homes, they love these, right? You know, I mean, it moves you away from having to go dig a giant hole in the ground, get the dirt, you know, pile it, you know.
Yes.
So it really does make their process a lot more efficient. Oddly enough, they charge about the same thing, but they tend to love columbariums.
Wow.
And they're all
Still a
invested in them
business,
as well.
I guess.
All right, any other?
I mean, oddly
Yes, we
enough,
do have
I've had
another
that
big
question asked of me more than one time, that why don't we have anywhere that we could have an ash garden, an ash, you know, columbarium. I've had that. It's not the most popular conversation that people directed me for the city, but it's definitely been there. I like it.
I do think it's a very wise choice for the future and really looking down the road. So then the next big question would be, and you're welcome to go out and look at section Q and see how much space is there. But my suggestion would be is like we mark out a certain amount of space, you know, and we allow a certain amount of time for the public to adjust to this. If they want to pre-buy, they can. But, you know, say a year or 2 years. But I think there should also be a limit. We could have a marker on a tree or something, but that will allow us to really do it for a much longer time.
Yeah, I think my suggestion to the council was let's determine the cost and the amount of work that has to be done, and staff can bring back a recommendation regarding what that demarcation line is and point in the ground with a suggestion, just so you have that. And we can kind of look and see how quickly it moves and those kind of things. So I think we've got a good point here, knowing you have, from what you said, as it relates to move forward with columbarium, let's do the plans.
Sure.
Look at the area, and then we'll come back.
I do have a question just for clarification.
Sure.
When you say we have 300 grave sites available now, is that including partial expansion into the area where the columbariums would be, or is that,
That
that is
is-
excluding that?
That is pretty much 100% in the exact same area. So it's kind of one or the other to a
Okay.
certain extent.
So really, the 300 may not be accurate if we decided to do the columbariums.
Oh, no, so 300 is exactly how much space we have left.
Okay.
Right? The columbarium would 100% encroach into that space. And there are some other spaces, like we did look at the mausoleum, and we could put a few there. But again, it's sloped, there's some drainage issues. You know, we might be able to sprinkle some of these eventually throughout, you know, if we find a better space or extra space. But the 300 graves you're seeing are literally in the two right-hand thirds of those two squares. And so, and we're not quite to that dotted line yet, but I know that it was Hunter Mark's recommendation to go ahead and break it into thirds and that be kind of where you phase out. All right. Anything else?
Any other questions? Okay,
All right, well, thank you,
thank
Council.
you. Okay, 7th Avenue Streetscape update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Happy to be before you tonight to present an update for our 7th Avenue Streetscape project. Just to review with you all the scope, overall scope of the project includes wider sidewalk design, narrowing of the travel lanes, plus other amenities such as trees, decorative lamps, landscaping, replacement of underground utilities, water and sewer, in addition with innovative stormwater treatments, brick crosswalks, and accessible ramps. As you're well aware, there have been challenges that we've run into, including road closure that has been in place for 8 months, resulting in detours and reduced parking in the area. And excavation, yield surprises, unexpected conflicts requiring change of grades and alignments, unknown utilities uncovered or severed by excavation, including gas lines and water lines, significant below-ground soil cell work, which is what is going to support the street trees, and it's tied into our stormwater drainage system. Overhead utilities required a significant deal of coordination between, power, telecommunications, and the general contractor and their subcontractors. And we appreciate that the stakeholders have handled the challenges with grace and agility. And we all share the goal of this project being an unmitigated success for the community. This image shows an overall of some of the things that exist underground between water lines, sewer lines, gas lines, electrical lines, stormwater. So these are not things that we were aware of their locations prior to the project, but we've encountered and we're familiar now with where they are. And some of those things, as I mentioned in the note there may be several of these utilities that are inactive, but sometimes we do not know that until we've encountered it and have to figure out how to approach it, determine whether or not it's active. I wanted to show you guys an example of, just one example of what we found. This is a old sewer line that has bends in it that we didn't expect, and kind of changed our approach with how to navigate through at what elevation. required some field adjustment.
Yeah, so Brendan, in this case, I've always been told that sewer doesn't run uphill, but it looks like in this case, we're actually running sewer uphill. Is that what we're doing?
So this is, yeah, what we're doing here is, we're having some creative turns in our sewer lines. Generally, we try to minimize the number of turns, in our sewer system, but underneath the soil here, you can't see it, but it actually makes another 90-degree turn into the system. So that certainly was unexpected, and our contractor had to be agile and figure out how to adjust it and work with us in finding a way to make that work, and we certainly appreciate that. Just another example of an image showing you the various utilities in one shot here. We've got some water, new sewer, and stormwater that were installed. And in this image, they look to be nicely parallel with one another, but of course that's not always the case. And this image, I just wanted to put it up to show you a lot of times the way things are displayed in the plan view may be a little bit different than how they are in the ground in practice. So just wanted to show that as well. And what I wanted to call attention to with this slide is the result of all the work that we've done to date. I wanted to call your attention to, let me see if I could figure out how to use this. Okay, so, oh, that shows up on both sides, that's cool, okay. So these lines here, the lower lines that run in front of the face of this building, I wanted you to call your attention to those, as well as this utility pole and the traffic lights. So this is obviously a Google Street View image that was taken prior to the project, and here it is yesterday. You can see that those lines were lifted. Duke had come in and put in some taller poles that raised all those lines up. That one utility pole that was in front of the barber shop has been removed, and their service line is now underground. The remaining line that you see there will be raised when AT&T comes to do that. That's on their schedule to do. Another item I wanted to point out to you guys is maybe difficult to see in this image, but I just put this in there to kind of highlight, if you're familiar with the entrance as it existed prior to our project, in front of, in the image is shown as Triskelion, of course now it's the Mission. There was quite a bit of drop-off coming out of that entrance, a very difficult situation to navigate, particularly for somebody in a wheelchair. And so this is what it looks like as of yesterday with an ADA ramp and some steps. We think that's a significant improvement for the users of that building. So what has been completed to date? This is a photo, a drone photo that was taken yesterday. And I apologize for how dark it is. The rain clouds kind of had us beat there. But yeah, this helps a little bit. So what I wanted to highlight is the concrete work that's been installed. You can see through here, there's a lot of curb and gutter work and sidewalk work that's been put in, and that curb and gutter extends almost approaching the Locust Street intersection. And that's what the emphasis has been on recently on the job site. And then what I wanted to do quickly is run through the various task portions of the project and give you an update on what's been done, so that the portions that are highlighted here are the work for the water that's been completed, the sewer that's been completed, stormwater that's been completed, installation of the electrical conduit that's been completed, and this highlights the concrete work that's been completed at 75%, and the landscaping that's been installed at 40%. And this is overall, the project is based on the work build through August is at 75% complete. And so as to what remains with our project, our current expectations are put in there with cooperation of the weather. This project will be completed within the contract period and within the contract budget. To get into more specifics, we expect that phases 2 and 2A, which are, here I'll highlight, so phase 2 is this yellow area here, 2A is the intersection of Maple Street, are expected to be completed by Thanksgiving, open by Thanksgiving, and phase 3, which is this orange area, is expected to be open by Christmas.
Is there no way to get Maple Street open? And I don't know, I guess it's going backwards from, maybe you're working from west to east. Is that right? Or is it working west to
Yes,
east?
that's correct, yeah.
Is there any way to jump? Because that's really a pain.
Yes, we,
Can you guys get creative? John, I don't know if you've talked to him. Brian, I don't know if you guys have even discussed this. I know it's probably awkward, but that's hurting.
sure, and we have discussed that, and understand that emphasizing opening Maple Street, that what has been the major part of that conversation until recently is completing let me see if I can bounce back to, well, maybe this is a good one. Just to highlight the amount of underground work that is there. Now, that has been the major effort in getting Maple Street to a point where we can get it open. And so I'm happy to say that at this point, we've basically completed all the underground work there. There's some tying together of stormwater that needs to happen there as we finish off our connection to the system there. But that is certainly
Thanksgiving's so far away still.
Right.
So let me jump in here and understand council's concern and the public's concern about that. But let me part of all of our frustration about the project is, contractor again is clearly within their contract period. I think ultimately where our frustration is we had unrealistic expectations in the beginning. Unrealistic expectations. Those expectations were shared with the public and the business owner, and I won't blame anybody or everybody. I'll just leave that saying it's part of the project. Lessons learned. We had unrealistic expectations. So the idea that we could get some of this open earlier than where we were was unrealistic. I think it's been, we're well over 10 years since we last did a streetscape project, and we've forgotten all the pain and anguish that we had on Main Street. Main Street was not quite as complicated as this project, talking to the engineering team. So Councilmember Miller, I say all that to say, I wish I could tell you what you wanted to hear and say that we could have it open sooner than Thanksgiving, but we've done that once. We haven't met our deadline, so I think the position we have to take is we'll have it open by Thanksgiving, and we're working as fast as we can, that if we can get it done faster, we will. Because I think at this point, the mistake we have made is telling people what we thought they wanted to hear. We thought we could get it open quicker. There was lots of people involved early on. We thought that the idea was if we closed the whole street, we could get it done quicker. The reality is that's not. We had some expectations there, and we didn't meet them, and we've got to take it for what it is. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think you want to hear, because I don't know that we can get it open before Thanksgiving.
Can you describe what were the unrealistic expectations that we had?
And I don't want to speak, but I'll try, Brendan, because I don't think this was your expectation. So let me take the heat a little bit, and then you correct anything I get wrong. Is that fair? Is that fair? So the idea was, when we started looking at the phasing of this, and Jamie, you jump in here too, and Brent, I think I understand this, but correct me if I'm wrong. As we were doing the phasing of the project and looking at the project, there was a discussion at some downtown meetings that so we had the contract period, we had the full contract period going from 8 months ago until December, okay? When we were going through, and again, correct me if I get wrong, anything I get wrong, as we were going through discussions with the Downtown Advisory Committee, and many of those folks are from 7th Avenue, the idea was pitched out there that if we closed the whole street, we could shorten the construction period and get it done before December, okay? That was the idea. And the date was that we could get part of the street open down to Locust Street, or a portion of the upper portion, that we could get it open in, first it was May. The original idea is we could get it open May. Is that what I remember? And that was not a correct, we oversold that assumption. The idea is that we could close the whole street and it would move faster. Hindsight is that's not realistically. That did not happen. Closed so that one side would have access. We would work on one side, get that done, and then move to the other side. The expectation at the time was that if we closed the whole street, it could be done, and that's turned out not to be the case. And so the expectation is, here we are, and we're still within our contract period, expecting to be done within our contract period. But those expectations of doing it faster, getting things open sooner, were not realistic, and that's why I think from a staff perspective, as much as we've all been pushing to say we can get it done before Thanksgiving, we're scared to death to put expectations out there that are not realistic, because we've done it before. I'll just be honest.
Did the Downtown Advisory Board, they're the ones that made, like, hypothesis of being able to close down the whole road? Or was this information given to the Downtown Board by qualified people or contractors?
I wasn't in the meeting. Jamie, you want to talk about how that conversation happened?
Yeah, it was presented as either phases of closing, not by lane, but closing phases of like the intersection to Locust and then the Maple intersection. So it was presented in phases of blocking off in front of the businesses for an extended period of time. And so then the Downtown Board, that was presented by the qualified people. And so then the Downtown Board had said, if we close it all, because if it's closed for these large portions with fences up for an extended period, that's going to be just as bad as everything, the whole street being closed because of the traffic flow, everything like that. And so they had asked if it was all closed in one fell swoop, would that make things faster? And told yes.
By the qualified people?
Yes, correct.
Told the unqualified people that
Correct.
it would be better?
Yeah, and so the Downtown Board's expertise is what's best for what their opinion is for the businesses overall, and that was getting it done faster and more efficiently, in the most efficient way as possible.
Well, I'm extremely disappointed in the qualified people who made that recommendation to the unqualified people, because they were very wrong. And they should have known better.
Maybe. They should have maybe known better.
Oh, no, John.
Councilmember Hensley, I would just, not to argue with you, but I would just say, there are things that in construction sometimes become unexpected, and there were some things outside of our control. Now, hindsight is we wouldn't do it this way again, but I will say, I want to say that there were some promises made that we didn't meet, and I think we'll take responsibility for that. But I think our folks were making a best effort based on the information we had at hand. I want to stand up for the engineering team and the staff to say, based on what we had at the time, these projects are very complicated. And so I will say, yes, we would do things different, with things perfect. We're as frustrated as the business owners are, but just felt like I needed to say that.
Also throw in, and something Brian shared with me, 90 days, Duke, and
Overhead utilities was a 60 from one and 3 weeks, 30 from another, so that's 3 months.
there's 3 months that nothing we had to do with. But I don't even want to get into this. We can have this discussion later. I'm just asking you if there's any creative way at all that you can at least say north-south Maple, even if they could come north on Maple and just turn right to get down in there, come south from Maple and just turn left and protect that area where you're finishing up here. I just want somebody to think like they had a business there. I don't know if you can do it or not. I just want somebody to spend a little damn time looking at that possibility. That's all I'm asking. I don't want to beat anybody up. We had tons of rain on the front end. We've had tons of rain on the back end. We had 90 days there. We have crooked sewer lines. And I mean, this thing was just a challenge. It's going to be beautiful and everybody there will benefit from it. I just want to see if we can get Maple Street functioning, even partially so, before Christmas, Thanksgiving, anywhere. You guys,
Understood.
and if you can't, you can't, but I would be mad at myself if I didn't ask.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and maybe one thing I can mention is just which is the best to illustrate this. What is left to do in that intersection largely includes a crosswalk, which is a little bit faded here. There's a crosswalk there, and then through the intersection there, and then
I don't know if you can. Yeah. I don't know if you can cheat it over a little bit. Close to the tracks,
Right.
Create a temporary lane, a temporary turn. I don't know. Just put some thought into it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that input, and I'll just mention for consideration, let's see if this had, the activity, I'll show the narrowing of the lanes. You can see with the curb that's laid out there, and the construction activity. There's storing of materials on the site, and as well as subcontractors going back and forth, and there's the construction fence that surrounds the construction site. Just wanted to kind of paint a picture of what's going on there, just in consideration of best alternatives for how to approach phasing or anything like that.
So Brenda, one of the things that the team is, you know, explained to me on various calls and those kind of things is now that if we can get some good weather, I don't have much control right for this storm, and maybe you've got kind of an estimate, you know, you've got the phasing there, but now that the underground, really, if we can get some good weather, we can pick up some speed here a little bit. Not guaranteeing anything, but we got to get those crosswalks in, and maybe the idea is if we can focus on the crosswalks down at Maple and 7th first. I don't know if you can push the contractor to focus there first, and if there's opportunity to make that happen, but.
That's their choice.
Well,
If you tell them you want to do it there, unless there's some tie-in technical to it, sorry. It's our project.
so, yeah, so, so I guess look at it that way, and if there's ways to get that open, I think we've heard loud and clear, about that, about the intersection there, but,
I do want to say, I've had them telling me they're so excited about getting it. The ramp you guys put in, whoever put the ramp in for the upholstery, JJ, he loves it. I mean, we're keeping our word. It's just, we just got to push it. And right now, Maple Street's a big deal for people to access, even, you know, more towards the the east there on 7th.
7th, coming down 7th. Yes, sir.
Please just try.
Yes, sir. We'll definitely look into it.
And I mean, if you have to be stubborn,
Yes, sir.
push it, John.
We've got good people for that.
Use that look you give me sometimes, John.
I think it's also important for the community to know that all of those businesses are open. Like, I know that downtown has done a lot of work to get the word out that the businesses are open. And yes, there is construction there. And yes, you may have to walk a little bit further, but our small businesses need you to go and shop with them. They need you to go over that little bit of a hurdle if you are able to, and still go and shop with them. Because they are still there, they are still opening every day, they are still hanging on, but the only way for small businesses to persevere through things like this is if our community members come and shop with us, as opposed to going to big box stores. So I know it might be a little bit more difficult, but I know that those business owners would be really appreciative because they are still showing up every day to be open for us.
Yes, I appreciate it, and I believe that's a good segue to a slide that Jamie put together.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, good segue on that. Just, these are some of the things just that we have tried to put together to support the businesses. Some creative ways that are within the legal authority of what we can do as a city, and then also with support from the Friends of Downtown. Some things that we've done to provide support have been through our Dogwood Health Trust grant with the Downtown Opportunity Fund to provide technical assistance for marketing in partnership with the Lucy Agency. And so they provide marketing support for, I believe it's 12 businesses now, as far as getting them set up, so then that way they're ready for when the streets open back up and things are getting moving. We've also been working with Mountain BizWorks to provide opportunities for bridge loans. And so they are working with individual businesses. I think they've spoken with about 7 or 8 businesses at this point. I don't know if all of them will be using loans, but they've talked with them about what they're looking to do. And they've also offered to waive their closing costs, which is about a $1,500 fee on a $20,000 loan.
What interest rate is, do you know what the interest rate is?
I'm not sure what the rate, I think it was 7 or 8%, something in that general area.
I just wonder if it dropped any with the recent change.
Yeah, I have not heard on that. I think they do probably adjust with what the Fed is, but I don't know for sure. We've offered signage support just for temporary signs. I have checked on our farmers market. Oh,
Back up just a minute.
Yeah.
You did point out, I remember one time, that someone could pay the interest rate down too. There was an
Yeah.
option of doing that. Like a $20,000 note, if you paid it $1,500 or something like that, it would drop it down to 5%, I think is
Yeah,
what it was.
yeah, buying down the rate was
9
about,
points, yeah. I know
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of.
But paying money that they shouldn't have had to pay in the first place, so.
yeah, it was about,
Come on, Jen. I mean, this is gonna be an incredible thing. It has had its bums, but Main Street survived with it. We're gonna keep working and sending people there. This was not some hack job that we just didn't care about happening. Crappy things happened in this. I'm sure they're gonna sit around and learn, but I'm not gonna beat them up over this thing the whole time because it was hard. 90 days, nothing we even had to do with. But we just gotta get it finished and keep working for them, and you guys have done a lot. And we'll try to help them all we can, but, you know, you guys can sit around, circle wagons and learn from it. But, you know, it's gonna be awesome, it's gonna be incredible, and I keep hearing that from them. They have taken a lick, but let's get her done right.
And here's my promise, we're not giving up, we're not settling for Thanksgiving being or Christmas. That is just what we feel comfortable saying in this room to the public. We are gonna move as fast as we possibly can move going forward. People are in the room that can get that message spread, they understand, everybody understand? So, we had a meeting on site today, matter of fact, among us preparing for the storm, because we realized how concerned the city council was. We had been meeting regularly by video, but today, following the last meeting, they met in person to make sure that the message was sent that we've got to get this done fast. Also, we have, our internal team has scheduled meetings every 2 weeks with me to make sure that I express the concerns of the council. So I don't want you to think we haven't been pushing. Over the last month or so, we meet every 2 weeks so that I could jump up and down and say, why is it taking so long, and try to help Jamie. I think we've had those meetings. Is that accurate? Right? But at the same time, we're not gonna, we've told people what they wanted to hear, and that was a mistake. We wanted to be honest with you, and tell you what we could tell you, and we'll go, but we hear you. Go fast, get it done, get it open.
I don't think we told people what they wanted to hear. We told people what we hoped was going to happen.
one thing that I'll end on is, we do have our subcommittee of the board has gotten together to meet to plan for a big grand opening celebration in the spring. They want it to be when the weather's nice, and it'll coincide with the farmer's market opening day on May 3rd, and have something be on 7th on the street for the afternoon of that. So it'll be a big block party, and so we are preparing for that very soon. And we do not have a farmer's market this Saturday because of the weather, but the farmer's market continues on, and that's a great way to encourage folks to go to the area, and not just for the farmer's market, but to go to those businesses in 7th Avenue when there's a lot of fun going on in that general area, and also for our holiday markets, which should be coinciding with some of the street being open, hopefully, all of it, but some of it being open on the Saturday before Thanksgiving and the first Saturday in December. I'll go if there's any other questions for.
No, I just want to say, I'm impressed that you're able to do this with all the hiccups. You still remain within the budget. So that tells me that some of this cost that contractor must have absorbed, unless you had a contingent fund set up somewhere. So I admire you for that. You need to, and also what I'm doing personally is groups that I'm involved with, I'm encouraging us, like a group of 20 of us are going down on the 16th or more, and we're going to support one of the businesses on there. So that's something that maybe we could get out to the public, to these other organizations. Hey, you know, do a group thing and support those businesses. But you know, I commend you on that. I want to know your secret budget.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We already had our discussion, but there's that neat picture there. I wanted to see you guys.
It's very pretty.
Okay, there was an addition of updates from the city manager.
Yeah, just quickly, I'll hit the one, I know council has been contacted by a number of, or at least some individuals regarding concern associated with the new vape shop that is proposing to locate across from Hendersonville High School. As I understand it, I think Lou, Community Development Director Holloway, is currently not here. He's on vacation, but as I understand it, and I'll look to the city attorney to correct me if I get wrong, but I think there's nothing currently within our zoning ordinance that can prevent the vape shop from opening. It is considered a commercial business like all commercial businesses, and that is a commercial zone, and there's no way to stop them at this point. However, I think if council wants us to look at putting distance requirements or location requirements, that's something that the city staff could look at to determine and treat it like we've treated some other businesses through the day, whether it be pool hall, whether it be a variety of things through the years that we've had restrictions on. So,
I would ask one other thing. Can't sell to minors, right? Vape shops?
it's whatever the state law.
What's state law, Chief?
They're not supposed to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting to.
The CBD and.
Chief, come on up here a minute.
Regulations on that.
Chief, tell us limitations of sales to minors. What is it? No minors at all, right?
Yeah, no minors at all, and if anybody that goes into a vape shop and expresses, because there are items that they sell in there that can be used for tobacco, they can also be used for marijuana, so if someone were to even mention the word or any indication that they would be using these devices for illegal purposes, the shops are legally not allowed to sell. Not sure how all of them navigate all that, but we don't like the idea it's across from the high school, but there are laws in place to prevent underage persons from,
And we will be enforcing that, right?
We will, sir, yes, sir.
That's all I need to know.
Where is it proposed at?
At the corner.
Oh. Where the mechanic used to be?
You just had, someone just had a bust or whatever you would call it now on selling to minors or selling something that wasn't right recently, didn't it?
We had a couple of our shops in town that were under investigation from, through Homeland Security for a lot of different concerns that they had. Some of it was where the money was going that they collected from their sales. And but historically we've had issues with vape shops in the past. I think we recently had one where it was several $1,000s worth of merchandise was stolen from a shop, and so we've had some break-ins overnight, over time. But this one's just concerning just because of the location that proximity to the school.
They have every right to sell legally and to adults. I just want to emphasize that we're not going to tolerate, selling to minors. Anywhere we see it,
That's correct.
I'm sure it will be handled.
I think it would be nice to look into some sort of proximity ordinance for things like this. Specifically because I think a lot of the vape shops are setting up in anticipation of legalizing marijuana, to be totally honest with you. So I think there's a whole other long-term game that they're playing. But I also think while we're researching that on proximity of things like vape shops, it'd be nice to also research if there's a way to do some sort of proximity for protest or handing out political paraphernalia right in front of high schools.
That one would be a lot tougher, a lot tougher because of the public sidewalk in front. I mean, we can take a look, but that one would be a lot tougher.
Okay. I just think it's worth looking.
Could we give the sidewalks to the schools?
That thought did cross my mind, but I haven't looked into that yet.
I mean, and we just promised to maintain their sidewalks for them if we needed to.
I
But
don't know about that.
Nice try.
I'm
I
not,
just feel like they're adjacent.
I'm not finished. I
They're in the
mean, we could
right-of-way.
keep going, yeah.
I'm just saying the sidewalks are in the street right of way and it's part of the public street, so that may not work, but.
Tricky.
Yeah, that one's a lot tougher. Sorry. Please continue.
Can you designate areas even? Because we talked about that one time.
You can do some time, place, and manner restrictions, but I don't know that
They can't block a sidewalk, can they?
they
I
cannot
just
block a
feel like high
sidewalk.
school students are going through enough, right? None of us need to show up on their doorstep when they're getting out of school and try to hand them a flyer about anything.
You know, with great.
Let them be.
Okay.
That one's gonna be a lot tougher. I'll just be, I'm not gonna create any expectations on that one.
I know, I'm just throwing it out there. I just figured since we're talking about this.
Sure, certainly.
So gas stations, though, and pharmacies do sell cartridges type things
Oh, that's
already.
true.
So I guess my question is, right, if you're gonna limit like an official vape store, then are you
Really?
eliminating the sales of any of that material? Because then you're getting into Walgreens and
Yeah.
other things that are already directly next to it or by it.
That is a great point.
That is a great point.
Well, a wise man once told me, John Connet, when I was mad about it, well, you know, Jen. So, I mean, he's right sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, not often, but sometimes. Okay, so we got direction on the vape shop. We want to clarify that for the public. So, second thing, we are, our staff is busy preparing for Hurricane Helene. This evening, the mayor will sign a proclamation stating state of emergency effective 8 a.m. in the morning. We will be standing up our Emergency Operations Center at the new fire station, being staffed 24/7, beginning 8 o'clock in the morning. All departments are preparing equipment and fueling, generators, everything that's necessary to prepare for a hurricane that we're experiencing. Everybody's going on callback. We also will have folks working, asking people to take care of their home needs today and tomorrow as they prepare for the storm. We're preparing for it to be a multi-day event because even when the rain stops, depending on the amount of rain, the flooding will continue to be there for a period of time. So we have the state of emergency, as I have explained to council earlier today on individual phone calls. We are revoking all special event permits for the weekend just because our staff will be stretched then. But we are preparing, we're in communication with emergency management at the county. We'll stay in constant communication there. So we will keep you informed, but it's going to be a wet few days, and we hope we're preparing for just a lot of rain, but we're preparing for anything that we may face. So just wanted to give you an update. Any specific questions about that? Any more information? But that's kind of how we're going from there.
I don't have any questions, but I'm just thinking about some of the unhoused.
So also that has happened today. So we have contacted our partner agencies and the nonprofits, and we've asked them to go and to the low-lying areas that we know where homeless unhoused camps may be, and encourage those folks to move and leave. We've also been in contact with the rescue mission. They are operating under their code GRACE, which means they'll take in anybody, no questions asked, as long as they can physically walk in there and they're not violent. And but we're also been in contact with our service agencies, asking them to help us with the unhoused.
Good, thank you.
And Public Works, I've been getting calls today. They've been all over the place on stopping drains. So thanks to these two for helping get that going. there's a lot of leaves on the ground right
Yeah,
now. And they're pulling big old blobs out. I stopped and unplugged one on the way home last night, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know what was going to come out of there. But it wasn't what I thought.
Pennywise.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say, Stormwater czar Mike Huffman is on the job. And
Stormwater czar.
so we have got him, he's gonna run the show here the next couple of days, so.
Does it mean, Mike, that I need to check my drainage ditch?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check the drain across from my house too. Actually, I'll make Tony check it. They also just canceled Henderson County Public Schools for tomorrow and Friday. So- Yeah, tomorrow for students only, it's an optional workday, and then Friday for both teachers and students, so.
That's all I have.
That's it.
In that case,